before you were sitting in that role as a nonprofit board member and before you joined a board, what did you actually think board service was?
Absolutely nothing. I thought I would go to a meeting, I'd sit there, I'd add it to my resume, and I'd go back to work. I was wrong.
I think it was, this feels like it might be good for me and not something that truly would benefit the organization. I think board service comes with being involved. It's not a show up, go to a meeting, help make some decisions, but truly understand what it is you're doing and why, and be connected to it, because I think that's how you create measurable impact. I think it's good to have intention, but there's a big difference between intention and making an impact.
Hi, I'm Leah Barr. Welcome to A Better Way for Doing Good, the Foundation X podcast. Here we sit down with change makers, innovators, and dreamers who are building a better way for philanthropy and social impact. Just a quick note before we get started, the ideas we share here are for general information only. Nothing you hear should be taken as tax, legal, or financial advice. For guidance on your own situation, we always recommend talking with a qualified professional.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming to this very special first ever live edition of A Better Way, the Foundation X podcast. One of the reasons I'm excited for this conversation is one of the things we often talk about in this podcast is that there isn't just one right way to give or do good. For some people, impact looks like volunteering, donating to a cause, showing up consistently. But one path we find that often feels a little mysterious is board service. And most often people hear the word board and immediately think, this isn't for me. It's for someone with more expertise, more time, more connections, more experience. But when you talk to people who serve on nonprofit boards, you often discover something different entirely. So today's conversation is really just about that journey. I'm joined by Trisha Zeller and Cameron Rosenow, and we start this podcast two ways every single time. One is that I'm going to read your bios to you. I think it's an important moment for you to just take in all of your accomplishments. And two, we're going to pull a generosity table topic card, and you weren't prepped for it. So we're going to just see what your answer is right off the cuff. But first, we'll start with their bios. Trisha Zeller is Chief of Staff at NorthRock Partners, where she helps align strategy, goals, and performance across the firm with clarity, accountability, and long-term impact. Her own nonprofit board service reflects both personal connections and evolving purpose. Trisha previously served on the board of the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota, an organization supporting people and families impacted by epilepsy through education, advocacy, and community connection. She now serves with Gateway Meadows Equine Assisted Services, a Minnesota-based nonprofit using equine-assisted therapeutic and coaching experiences to support healing, growth, belonging, and purpose, especially for veterans, first responders, and their families. Cameron Rosenow is an advisor at NorthRock Partners, Head of Growth, and serves as president of the board of directors for the Abilities Tennis Association of North Carolina. A lifelong tennis player, Cameron brings his love of the sport together with a commitment to inclusion and community. Abilities Tennis creates free adapted tennis opportunities for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities across North Carolina, helping build athletes, their fitness, their friendship, their connection, confidence, and belonging. Together, Trisha and Cameron bring two distinct windows into nonprofit board service, one shaped by advocacy and lived connection, and the other by passion, community, and long-term impact. I'm grateful to have them here and for this live conversation about what it means to serve in a meaningful way. You ready for me to pull a card? We're going to wing it. No prep. Okay, we're going to answer this question later, so we're going to pull another one. Darn it. Okay, I love this. Cam, we'll start with you. What is the most generous gift you've ever received, and can you describe it?
That's really good. I think opportunity was the best gift I've been given, and that came from my parents. I think it can't be understated, the ability to receive a chance. It's really hard to earn opportunity, but to be given opportunity was, without a doubt, one of the greatest privileges.
Great answer. I'm going to say time. I had some learning challenges as a small child, and I had a teacher that would stay after school and help me learn to read. And again, not a gift, but just that time is probably what propelled me to be where I am able to achieve today.
I love it. We're going to talk a lot about time here too, so it's a perfect segue. Because we never ask our guests to do something we wouldn't do ourselves, I'll also answer the question. I think one of the most generous gifts I've ever received is someone saying your name in a room that you're not in yet. and being willing to be selfless in the pursuit of my career and my growth and my development. And I think that is a lot more meaningful than we give it credit for on the daily. Trisha, Cameron, I think we should start at the beginning. Trisha, you've served on boards supporting very different missions, starting with the Epilepsy Foundation, as we heard in your bio, and now at Meadows. Looking back, what first pulled you to nonprofit involvement and just overall community service?
Great question. I would say my parents modeled the behavior for me as a child. My mom and dad were always involved on local community boards that generally tied to what my sibling and I were doing. So if it was the PTA or the preschool or Girl Scout leaders, just showing how if you care about something, the best thing you can do is give your time to it and make it better than you found it. And I have embraced that. Prior to big board services, I did a lot of animal rescue boards here and there. Just always, my mantra has been, leave it better than you found it. And that has dictated all the extra time and effort I've put in so far.
Love that quote because I did scouts growing up and was involved in my church as well. So I think giving was sort of in my DNA early. But I got my Eagle Scout at a young age, and that was always like one of the things that we taught or were taught, and it was always leaving things better than you found it. And so just giving at an early age, giving of your time, if you have resources or, just really anything, I think it's even that opportunity you've received, being able to give others that opportunity was indoctrinated early in those organizations.
Fantastic. Cam, I'm curious, you talked about your parents a little bit and opportunity. You talked about starting things at a young age, and you started playing tennis at a young age, still an avid tennis player. Tell me a little bit about the point in which that personal passion for tennis turned into something you wanted to use in service to others.
Yeah, so discovering abilities tennis was one of another great gift that I've been given. The natural intersection of philanthropy and something that I already enjoy and am passionate about was something that when I thought of board service initially, was not something I was actively seeking. I kind of stumbled upon it. But the ability to be passionate about something that is also making an impact actually amplifies the ability for you to give an impact because you really care at a different degree than just showing up because you've been invited to contribute, which is not important, but to be passionate about something and to have that be an integral part of your life, and then to be able to deliver, whether it's opportunity or resources or time, structure, so that others can really find joy and a sense of belonging. It's really great.
Trisha, I think Cam just touched on something that's really important, which is like finding the right mission. And in your answer to our original question, you talked a little bit about time and the organizations you've served on, Epilepsy Foundation and Gateway Meadows. Those are pretty distinct organizations from a mission perspective. What was it about each of them that made you say, like, this is where I want to invest my time and effort?
Great question. So my daughter was diagnosed with epilepsy at 9 years of age. And prior to that, we spent about 4 years chasing what we thought were 7 different material medical diagnoses and just going through that swirl of uncertainty. And by the time we got a name for what was going on, I knew there had to be a better way to have people navigate the health system. And I come from working for United Health Group at that time and struggled. And so that I'm like, this is it. I'm going to make this better. Like, there's no reason that a family should go through with this. And then if we think of socioeconomic disparities, how would a parent that's working a shift be able to spend 2 hours on the phone calling doctors and advocating for their child? And I found the Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota. They do amazing work, and I knew I could make it better. And then for Gateway Meadows, after 6 years of being the president, the executive chairman of the Epilepsy Foundation, I'm like, I need something smaller, but I still want to give my time. And I have, probably since 9/11, it's our duty to respect those people who support us at the absolute worst times of life. And so I have been a philanthropic, just dollar giver to those organizations. I also come from the state of Wyoming, middle of nowhere, grew up with horses. And I happened to find an organization that combined both of those to help those soldiers and first responders that are beyond traumatized from protecting us. And I'm like, okay, I can help them. Plus, they have no clue what they're doing. So it's perfect. Like, they just needed me.
Yeah, I'm curious for both of you. I'd like you both to answer this question. For people listening, I think the sticky point can be admiring causes from afar, but not really knowing when it is the right fit So what are some of those indicators that you both found in your own journey that helped you understand, like, this is where I'm really supposed to be?
For me, with abilities, I think it was this creating a sense of community. Growing up, I think most of us have probably gone through some sort of struggle where finding a sense of belonging and fitting in. And, for these individuals, and we actually serve a mostly adult population. I think a lot of folks think of abilities tennis and they'll look at our website and the events we do and think that it's probably more for children, but it's our average age is, in the 20s and 30s for the adult pop that we serve. But that sense of community, I think, really, and that connective tissue that brings, where you can help create space for that, is incredibly powerful. And so when you have individuals that have intellectual disabilities, the ability to participate in conversation, do physical activity, show up and feel as though what you're doing is normal. We call individuals that do not have intellectual disabilities typicals in our language. And, it's just so awesome to see the joy that can come into a sport like tennis, which it's not an easy sport, requires hand-eye coordination, mental toughness, some endurance, etc. But when you create that space for them to perform and create confidence, connect with one another, and be around typical people in a way that feels like community, it's really special.
I'll start with the Epilepsy Foundation. We started first participating in the programming, then volunteering, then being part of the advocacy team, and then being on the board. But when we first started engaging, my daughter got to go to camp, like sleepaway camp, which we never thought was possible. And that's what stuck me, is she got to be a typical kid for 1 week. And I had a week of respite. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you my all. And then for the Gateway Meadows, it's just something to see when a soldier, and these aren't all come from recent conflicts, like we have the Korean War, Vietnam War era. And when you see a soldier just have a quiet moment with a very large animal like a horse and make that connection, you can actually watch that anxiety come down. I'm like, yep, I'm joining. We're good. This is my place.
I love finding those moments where you're like, it just feels wholly aligned with who you are and what you're looking for. You both have been on boards for quite some time. So I'm going to ask you to think back before you were sitting in that role as a nonprofit board member and before you joined a board. What did you actually think board service was?
Absolutely nothing. I thought I would go to a meeting, I'd sit there, I'd add it to my resume, and I'd go back to work. I was wrong.
I hate to admit, pretty similar. I think it was, this feels like it might be good for me and not something that truly would benefit the organization. I think board service comes with also being involved. It's not a show up, go to a meeting, help make some decisions, but truly understand what it is you're doing and why, and be connected to it, because I think that's how you create measurable impact. I think it's good to have intention, but there's a big difference between intention and making an impact.
Yeah, I'm curious now that we know you both thought you would be doing nothing, and you're not doing nothing. We know that to be true. Describe for us just what a day in the life of a board member or board president looks like for your organizations.
This is maybe a little philosophical on me in terms of how I think about it, but our board is comprised of about 8 to 10 individuals at any given point in time. And we have an executive director who runs the function of the organization, and she has a team of both 1099 and a couple people on her team. And she is the reason the organization is so successful. So the board's role is to get out of her way, to empower her, do not micromanage, help obtain resources, and be supportive. I mean, my day-to-day is I probably get 3 or 4 phone calls from her a week, and it's typically asking for permission on funds or things of that nature that doesn't need to be sort of ratified by a group, or it might be an encouraging word. It's not always a what's the bylaw or the rule. It's being a friend and using common sense, but also knowing that who's running the organization. If you are fortunate enough to have someone in a role to run the operation, get out of the way. Don't micromanage. Don't say things just to be heard. It's not about you, at all.
That's a good professional thing to live by as well. Get out of the way. My board that I'm currently on is a little bit different. There was only 3 board members when I joined. One has resigned. So there's 3 of us and the woman who runs it. And they are the most well-intentioned, but they don't have the discipline and rigor that you would want for an organization that needs to scale. Does this sound familiar to anyone right now? Conversations we might be having about business planning. So right now, my day-to-day is I'm doing strategic planning with them. because they are just existing day to day. They don't have a perspective of where they are in 5 years. And that's what we bring through the door as a board member, is not telling them every day, turn left, turn right. It's the more strategic thinking so we can achieve those greater wins, which is serving more people.
Yeah, I think that thinking it's phenomenal for nonprofit boards. I think it also can get in our way. And I'd love for you to speak to your colleagues right now. If one of them was interested in board service and was exploring it, but was saying things to themselves like, I don't know enough. I'm not senior enough. I don't have enough expertise to be on a nonprofit board. What would each of you tell them?
I think about this like coming to a new company or joining something new. A couple of rules to live by. One is like one of my favorite quotes, which is people will judge the decisions you make, that they'll never understand the choices you had. And I think about that as if you're going to come in and try to be heard without listening, you're probably going to knock down what was somebody's best idea. So listening, gaining understanding, you're joining the board to understand how it works, how it functions, why things are the way they are. Don't be concerned that you have to come in and make some measurable impact. I think that actually can trip people up and create a little discomfort for their initial board because they're setting an expectation that the board actually doesn't have of them. The board said, hey, we see a skill set in you. We see a personality in you. We like your passion. Our missions are aligned. Come join us. Come to a couple of board meetings, participate when it's comfortable, but not looking for you to come in and make some big wave of an impact and just listen. I think that's one of the best things you can do anywhere.
Okay, a little different because I'm a tsunami of not being quiet, which is shocking. So I would say is don't think that you don't have something to immediately offer. My goal in life, which I've always failed on, is listen and be quiet. Lasts about 5 seconds. So I even recall my first board meeting, I was sitting there listening and I immediately knew they were making a bad decision. And I thought, oh my gosh, do I open my mouth and say something or do I just let it ride because I'm the new kid? And this is another shocking revelation. I opened my mouth and said, hey guys, your 990 is bad and you really need to look at your tax paperwork and you're making bad decisions. And I added value immediately to that board. So that's how they immediately said, you need to join the executive committee because we have no idea what you're even talking about. So it's a balance, I think, between what Cam is offering and the Trisha Tsunami. There's like a great place to kind of land and show your value immediately.
It's almost like having you both here was intentional. Interesting how that works. Trisha, Gateway Meadow serves veterans, first responders, and their families, as you've told us. What have you come to appreciate most about the model of support that they're offering, especially from what you've told us around them being a small organization with limited board members?
I think that what's most impressive is how much they're able to do with very little financial resources. I mean, we're in wealth management here, so we see really, really big numbers. So when you see super small numbers, you're like, well, how could that possibly work? And that is the fortitude and scrappiness of a small nonprofit that you won't see in the bigger ones with, millions of dollars of assets. But we're still able to serve every single veteran or first responder that comes through the door, and they never pay a dime. So that's very impressive.
And Cam, love for you to talk about the mission in action for Abilities Tennis. You hinted a little bit at what it means for these athletes to find a space. But tell us a little bit about the other things you've seen when you create these opportunities specifically built for them.
Yeah. So again, the organization is made to create community. It's made to create a sense of belonging, to give them a sense of accomplishment, and to be able to provide a format in which if they have zero skill, that we can take them from a zero to a level of measurable improvement in a short amount of time. And like your organization, no cost to them. We provide free equipment, free locations, free coaching, tournaments, everything's completely paid for. What's been really neat, because I've been a part of this organization for a long time, I actually don't know how long now, maybe 13 or 14 years, is we started and we're in those days of no money in the bank, having to make the phone calls, putting our own money into the coffer to keep the programs running, to now we've won some national awards. And every couple of years now, we take our athletes to the U.S. Open up in Flushing Meadows in New York. And it's usually about 25 of them. And they get to perform on Arthur Ashe Stadium at a night match. They get to flip the coin with like a Djokovic or a Federer. And that has been, when you think about the infancy days of the organization, and now we're serving over 1,000 families in North Carolina, and we're just in North Carolina. It just shows you that if you're consistent, the discipline, there's passion, there's a good sense of community, and you have really good people involved. And again, I give all the credit to our executive director because she has been the engine behind this entire thing. It's so cool to see what type of impact that you can have on these people's lives.
Thank you. One of the things about nonprofit board services you both hinted is you get to bring your professional skills and expertise into the organization. But the beautiful part is that you learn things in return. And I think I would just love to peek behind the curtain for you both and ask, what has nonprofit board service taught you, and what have you brought from that experience into your professional day-to-day lives?
I have to go first for that one. Wow. Geez. Woo. I've definitely learned just personally that we're all very blessed and lucky to be able to serve on a board. When you typically work with organizations that Cam and I are discussing, you're working with a population that, they have declines. They're not able to function maybe at the top tier. And so the fact that you get to impact their lives in a positive way, like that's what fills me up. And to throw that back to the office to work, like I bring that back, like a little more humility, being more humble and never really understanding what a person's going through. So not to make judgment, epilepsy is a weird condition because it's an invisible disability, like a lot of neurodivergent. And so people judge very, very quickly. And so professionally, even if it's in just any kind of room, I like to hear people out before I get to judgment. And I feel like that's kind of where I've improved professionally.
That was really well said. Yeah. I think it is a sense of appreciation for where you're at in life, I think has been something. And I also think everything always feels really big in the moment. And I think giving yourself a sense of relativity of what really big is a bit of a selfish take on that, but it's given me a deep level of appreciation for the opportunities that, I've been gifted and how special that is. And I think the other thing, a little bit of a different tilt here is there have been some uncomfortable conversations at the board level. And I always think letting honesty reign supreme in the room is extremely important, even if it's hard to hear, even if someone's not going to take it very well, because I think you have to look at the mission above all else.
Thank you both. I'd like to take a little bit of a pivot. And I want you to speak to employees who are thinking about joining nonprofit boards who might not have done it yet. This next set of questions is going to kind of walk us through that journey. But I'd love to start with like one lesson you wish you would have known before you joined a nonprofit board.
One lesson I wish I had known. Well, it's interesting. It was probably my second or third board joining abilities. And one was an eagerness to participate, was not always a quality participation for me. So one was to be patient, listen a little bit more. The second thing is when I got into a position of leadership, it was really taking the time to understand why things are the way they are, knowing that the product of the organization is a sum of the parts, not a single vision. And I think when you work from a board level, you're typically guiding a conversation. You're not owning a conversation. And I think especially as someone who's like in a executive committee seat, there's this tendency to drift towards, oh, well, I am in this seat, therefore my opinion is X, and that's what it should be, but it's really not. You're there to guide conversation and have people feel heard so that when there are results, the results are owned by all, felt by all, shared by all.
I guess what I wish I would have known is being a board member, again, as I said, I didn't think I was going to do anything. It's more than just the meeting. The meeting is just the culmination of the work between. So it is a time commitment. It's not a huge time commitment, but it's nothing. If you can't go all in, don't do it yet. And that includes attending the events, because as a board member, you become the face of that organization. And a lot of people who have interviewed to join boards, like, I love everything you're going to do, but I refuse to ask people for money. And that's just the life of a board. But what's great is I'm not asking for you to fund me. It's not go fund Trisha. It's go fund an organization I believe in. And asking money for that is actually really, really easy and very, very rewarding. But again, in order to be a board member, you have to be willing to do all of it. And if there's parts of it you just cannot do, then maybe stay on the advocate volunteer side.
Yeah, you're hinting at one of the questions I wanted to ask, which is around just like the different ways you can participate and maybe even the pathway to board service. You talked about advocacy, you talked about volunteering, even serving on a committee. Can you just describe for everyone listening what that might look like and what that pathway might represent?
Volunteering is just you go to the website, you see there's an event, you can go and participate in it, or they're having, a rubber chicken gala dinner and you get to go with some fun people and put tinsel in your hair. And that's great because you get to learn about it. You get to donate some money. They never lose your email address. So you kind of become a donor. And then if you want to participate, you can start volunteering. And then advocacy is an interesting one, dependent upon the organization. You get an opportunity to talk to our elected officials at a federal, state, and local level to try to change the way society embraces people, in this case with disabilities. And that's extraordinarily rewarding, especially when you get those wins. And then the board service, again, is the culmination of all of that, sitting at the top and also having those business-driven financial analysis conversations to make sure the organization stays healthy.
What's one thing nonprofits are looking for that many people don't understand can be helpful? And Cam, we'll start with you.
I think, obviously, everybody knows nonprofits want money. They want volunteers. God, I keep using this word, but sometimes it's just to be given a chance, whether that's hey, we need a venue and you have to explain who you are, what you represent. And I see that, and a venue is just an example, but I think the open-mindedness of people to understand who you're serving, what you're serving, and that's sometimes asking a lot because a lot of people have a lot of different things that they're passionate about. So it's hard to garner not just the resources and time, but just the attention that you need to be successful. And so as we think about our organization and how we've grown and been successful, it hasn't just been about the community we've created for the athletes, but the community itself and how we've created that connective tissue there where there's a continuity. And so when folks are giving, or they're giving their time or their resources or their venue or whatever the case may be, we're helping them see that impact directly and creating that connectivity. But I kind of went a little all over the place there with that answer, but yeah, it's a really good question.
No edits. Loved it. No edits.
Retweet. Okay, one final large question. And then just like we start this podcast the same way, we end it the same way every time with rapid fire questions. So we're not there yet. But one of the last questions I really want you both to answer is that when employees leave this conversation today and they head back into their day-to-day tasks and their jobs and their responsibilities, what's one question you hope that they continue to ask themselves as it relates to community service, board involvement, and whether or not to take that next step?
I'll go with what I started with, is ask yourself how you can make this world or our community better than it is today. And just always have that in the back of your mind. And that will lead you to where your passion lies. And you can really, really see a difference.
Yeah, I think so much of what you are involved in is very much representative of who you are. And I think being able to find out your why and then contribute to that directly it's a question I ask myself all the time, because I think you also have to give yourself the space for that to change and evolve. But I think what you just said is beautiful because, we all want to make an impact. We want to leave this world in a better place that we found it, but you got to make space for yourself to ask yourself that question. Because if you're not, you're just going to continue to choreograph your days and they just all look the same.
Thank you. Are you ready for rapid fire? You get more of a benefit than most of our guests because we have to hand the mic back and forth. So you get a couple seconds to think. You're welcome. But I want you to come with the answer of the first thing that comes to your mind. The first question is, when you hear the phrase, a better way for doing good, what comes to mind?
Volunteering.
Fun.
Amazing. One value that continues to guide your leadership?
Fairness.
Honesty.
And then tell the people, either, you get to pick one, your favorite coffee order, or a daily ritual you cannot skip.
I'm not going to share how weird I am, so I'll go with a venti ice skinny caramel macchiato.
I'm going to hit 3 of them, which is a oat milk cortado with coal on the way to pick up donuts.
There you go. Amazing. Thank you both for being here and sharing a little bit more about your journeys. I know board service is professional, but it's also personal. And being willing to open up to your colleagues, to me, to those on Zoom is just very much appreciated. For those that joined us, really hope this conversation was just a representation of how board service is not reserved for a select few, that you can actually start where you are now. And it's about creating meaningful ways to align your skills, your passions, your expertise with the organizations in the community that need our help the most. This is not at all, meant to convince you to join a nonprofit board, but just illuminate for you the many pathways that you can get there and make an impact. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Cam and Trisha, for your involvement. We hope that this has been something that allows you to engage in philanthropic programs, if not, at least inspire you to take that engagement into the rest of the year. So thank you all. Thank you both, and have a great rest of your day.